Hi, this is Mukta, and this is a short video on my observations of the book Zero Limits by Dr. Joe Vitale. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So, uh, the book is basically based on a very interesting case study. There was a doctor, Dr. Lee, and yeah, he was a psychiatrist in a hospital in Hawaii, and the hospital housed criminally ill patients. These were dangerous patients, dangerous to themselves, dangerous to the people that they interacted with. The facility itself was very distraught. I mean, it was in very dire straits. The paint was peeling off, the plumbing had gone bad. The people were kept in chains, they were kept shackled. The inmates lived in cells that were obviously not very nice. There were no activities. The people who worked at the ward, they were constantly in fear. They had been attacked. uh, a lot of them would take sick leaves, obviously, or rather understandably, and overall it was just a really bad state of affairs. Many other psychiatrists had visited the hospital and tried to make things better, but to no avail. Now, this particular doctor, he has a history of studying with a Hawaiian teacher, and he studied this one particular form of prayer, a Hawaiian prayer called Ho'oponopono, which is basically a prayer that acknowledges your own complicity in a particular situation, and no matter how external or extrinsic it seems, you first acknowledge the fact that you are part of that situation and therefore you have caused it. You ask for forgiveness, and you thank and you love whatever form of energy that has brought that particular situation into your life. So, what is fascinating is that this doctor who practiced this Ho'oponopono prayer, he started reading the case studies of these inmates, and he read them and he prayed on these case studies and he cured them. He did not meet with a patient even once. And this methodology is what is explored in the book Zero Limits. Now, Zero Limits basically is very similar to the Vedic concept of Shunya, which is like it's zero, but it's not an empty zero. It is a zero that is full and calm and plush with possibility. What it does not have is a set of preconceived notions of what life should be like, what happiness should feel like, what displeasure actually is. There are no labels. It is the form of ultimate peace and ultimate satisfaction and ultimate liberation, basically. So, at that place where you are not labeling a situation as good or bad, at that place you are free, and at that place you have infinite potential and possibility. So yes, and what struck me is that it is very fascinating. I mean, the gods and goddesses that we kind of worship, the ones that are responsible for, say, destruction or dissolution, like say Lord Shiva or Ma Kali, that destruction is not always just a breaking down, or it's not messy, or rather it is messy, but the whole point of it is that the goal of all of that is liberation and freedom and pure creativity. So you're not just creating from your past memories or from what you already know, but when there is complete dissolution and you are not attached to anything, then the next round of creativity begins with a sense of faith that something new that will probably emerge in ways that you don't know or you can't recognize, but it's still good. So yes, Zero Limits is basically part of. I mean, there are two books. There is Zero Limits. This is the first book, and there's another book that follows at Zero, which I haven't read. So Zero Limits is basically in that genre of self-help books. But what really struck me is the story of Dr. Lee. To cure mentally ill patients and to get them to be healthy and in fact the environment at the facility had changed so much that flowers had started blooming, the paints stayed on the walls, which is such a telling sign that when your energy improves, then even things, inanimate things like home decor maybe, things just start looking more beautiful and they endure. What Okay, so the five things that really struck me, one was that this particular process or this particular prayer of Ho'oponopono, it basically consists of some phrases, and it means taking complete responsibility of everything that happens in your life. And I know that everybody talks about that, but the enormity of this just goes really deep when you get your head wrapped around it. So it doesn't just mean um, I have to take responsibility of what has happened to me or who has done what. I also have to take responsibility for what is happening to whoever is in my life. So if let's say I have an argument with my mom, then even though I may feel that she said some very unkind things, it's not just that I take responsibility about the fact that I caused the situation, but I also take responsibility of what my mother is thinking, what my mother is feeling. If I read an article on rape, then I have to take responsibility for what has happened with that woman. I have to take responsibility. Now, this is tough. I have to take responsibility for even what the rapist was thinking. And that was a part that I really, really struggled with. Because, how do you process this kind of information and not get into victim shaming, right? But in any case, this is one approach. The next thing that I really liked about the book is that it busts this myth that if you are in a relationship or for any relationship to improve, all the parties involved in the relationship need to do the work. It's not like that with this approach. With this approach, if you are doing the work and you are committed to cleaning your thoughts and keeping yourself in that state of zero where you're not labeling, you're not expecting, then you can turn things around. So in that sense, there is no relationship with anybody else. There is only you. And everything that you are seeing and everything that you are interacting or everybody that you're interacting with, no matter how glorious or how heinous, is just you in some form. So that was the other thing. The third thing is how much it ties in. This is a Hawaiian prayer, and how much it ties in with a lot of things that you read about in other ancient texts, like things like texts that talk about Zen or texts that talk about yoga, that there is no good or bad, there just is. And the more you try to escape the isness is when you're blocking flow, and that's what creates the problem. That was the third thing. The fourth thing I loved is just the fact, the way the writer went about researching the book. And I'll admit I wasn't really blown with the kind of writing that has happened in the book. It just felt a little amateurish. It felt like you see something or you hear something really great and you want to share it with people. You've not really given it time to settle. but maybe that's addressed in the book that comes after, at zero. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the way it was written, but I really liked the attitude with which this writer has researched the topic, how he got hold of Dr. Lee, how he interviewed him, how he set up these workshops where this particular doctor interacted with different kinds of people and things like that. It shows grit, and who doesn't like that? And the fifth is a very weird sense of what is this all about, and by this I mean this, like the living, the learning, the unlearning, this passing through, this holding on, the clutching, the groveling, the rising from the ashes, and all of that. What is this all about? Now, this approach basically tells us that all this is about just cleaning your past memories, and we are mainly operating out of love or fear, and fear, or burdened by an expectation of the future. So if it isn't love, if it's fear or future, then it is memory talking. And the whole point is to keep clearing these memories so that you get to the space where nothing exists, and that nothing is a very full, complete, lush nothing. So zero is the goal. So yes, that is my talk. It's a rather long video, but there was just that much I got out of the book. Thank you.